Does society lack imagination and creativity? Do we live in a sans serif country? Is our culture cookie cutter? These are some of the big questions on my mind right now, and certainly throughout the duration of this. And I think those questions have kind of built up because I am looking around, because I am observing and paying attention to everything, right? Certainly design. And it seems to me that a lot of the contemporary design and ideas and solutions to problems are just boring, redundant, and just lacking in overall character and personality and pizzazz and attitude. It's been really interesting to contemplate this. Now, what I've been doing is just walking around on the ground, taking photos of designs on building facades. And I live in a large city, and so naturally I notice buildings that are going up, right? But I'm also from the country. And when I go back home in rural Wisconsin, I see new construction, both industrial and residential. And I see the same thing as I see in the big city, and that's just boring. It's so stripped of any type of personality. It seems like it's just built to go up cheap and quick. And I think design affects our minds. When it really comes down to it at the core, design affects our minds. And everything is intentional, right? But when we eliminate the thought that goes into it, then we're just left with just blahness. So if we have this blahness, this boringness, that affects people. And it affects culture as a whole, right? Where people interacting together within a society, right? And so when I see these designs, I think, well, why is this, right? And I think there are three reasons. One, after World War II, people needed housing, right? You have this baby boom, but you also have this economic boom because the United States is essentially the only economy left standing in the world. And other countries hadn't caught up yet. And so there was this demand for housing, right? And this construction. Two, the culture in America is centered around a car rather than walking, right? So now the designs that I've been looking for, they seem to happen, or they seem to be produced late 19th century, early 20th century. So it's very nature-inspired, it's very floral. And then what I kind of noticed just going around, it kind of slides from that to kind of Art Deco. You have the Bauhaus movement that came in the 1920s, and everything becomes more stripped down and geometric. And then mid-century, then it becomes even more just geometric and just functional. But what I've noticed going around is that if you're not walking, right, then you're not really paying attention to the designs. So why bother making it more decorative, more ornamentation, more personality? Why would you do that to a building where people aren't going to see it as much? Perhaps. But the third thing is really the big point. And this is kind of the ugly side of capitalism. Now, I'm talking about this lack of beauty in society. When I think there's beauty in uniqueness and individuals and just like overall expression of this essence, this light that's inside of us, right? But when we try to make everything generic and kind of all the same or just to fit needs, then what is it saying in a bigger sense, right? But this kind of ugly side of capitalism is buildings are going up not to live but to sell. So they're not long-term commitments. It's simply to create and then move on. And you see this industrially, but also residential. The thought and kind of it's built into the American dream is like you build a house and then you sell it. Well, I shouldn't say that. You that all depends. But, if we're just creating property or creating buildings just to eventually just sell it, like where is this overall commitment? There seems to be, and if that's how we're approaching design and construction, of let's just build it as cheaply and as quick as possible, then we can turn around and make a profit off of it as soon as we can. There's this overall, I kind of have this issue with this lack of commitment. Because like we had mentioned before, design affects our minds and everything and culture. So if we're seen and we're constantly being surrounded by design that demonstrates to us we don't need to think long-term, we don't need to be committed, what does that lead to, Why should I put care and effort and detail into this building, this thing I'm creating, when I'm just going to pass along, right? So then it goes down to a deeper level. And if we're human beings interacting, why should I be my best self and show kindness towards you when we're just going to pass each other, right? And you're just one person and there's always going to be another person, It's kind of like that, and it creates this ripple effect. And so that's something I don't necessarily love about the design that is currently contemporary, because there's this lack of commitment, and it bleeds overall into the society that we live in. But it also creates this like cookie cutterness where everything is kind of, what do you call that? Like, when you have a gingerbread house and you have all the ingredients there and you have this gingerbread house in a box and you just assemble it, right? That seems to be not only the way we design and build things and create things today, it seems to be kind of our values in a sense. It's like, here you go. Here's everything you need. And then there's not a lot of, it strips the thinking and the thought and the nuance that goes into life. It's not that, I don't want to say simple, but it's like the beauty is in the nuance of people and of life. And it seems like we're eliminating that. And so that's kind of where my mind is. And the reason that's concerning is because when we want to solve problems, right? When we are approaching problems, we need to think creatively, right? But if we're only given this box of how to think, we can't solve those problems. So we go ahead and we try to solve problems with a limited set of tools in a way. And certainly if we want to solve the problems of the 21st century, we have to use our imagination, creativity, and, live with a little little seraph in our life, you know? So that's something I've a bigger picture that I'm kind of seeing throughout the duration of this project, Nuance Notes.